is the time. The alternative for people who can't or won't quit smoking is vaping. Vaping, we haven't talked about it on the program for a while. It's not strictly legal, and there is a campaign underway, you may be aware of this, that's been going on for a little while now. Legalise Vaping campaign, and the group Legalise Vaping Australia are going to be in Daylesford a little bit later on this morning. Brian Marlow is the campaign manager with Legalise Vaping Victoria and with us. Brian, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
That's all right. How illegal is vaping in Victoria?
So vaping in and of itself, if there's no nicotine in the liquid, is perfectly legal. However, smokers are addicted to nicotine, and the majority of vapers put nicotine in their vapes. So the possession of that actual nicotine is illegal, and you can face a fine of over $10,000 in Victoria for possessing it. Now, it's an unenforceable fine, but the end result is that shops like Victory Vape in Daylesford can't sell these products because they're banned for sale in Australia, and as a result, vapers buy their products overseas, and it provides a barrier to entry for smokers looking for a less harmful alternative.
Why do you say it's an unenforceable fine?
Police would essentially have to go around testing people's vape liquids, and then sending them off for tests to then fine them for possessing a nicotine vape liquid. So the end result is that vapers still access these products. We're not actually stopping vapers from accessing nicotine liquids. What we're doing is we're stamping down on small businesses that are helping people quit smoking.
Okay. Is it correct that you can be in possession of the nicotine vape juice if you have a prescription from your doctor?
So federal law says you can have up to a 3-month supply if you have a prescription from your doctor. The vast majority of vapers don't get a prescription, they just buy it online. But separate to that, all the state and territory laws say that it's actually illegal to possess it.
Okay. What's the latest science on vaping? Because proponents say that it is much better than smoking, and opponents tend to say we still don't know enough. So where is the science at the moment, Brian?
There's over 62 studies now that show that vaping is less harmful and that it helps people quit smoking. And these aren't studies coming from a random blogger on the internet. These are studies coming out from Public Health England, the UK Royal College of Physicians, studies coming out of New Zealand that are showing the health benefits. So there's a growing body of evidence showing that this is significantly less harmful, 95% less harmful than smoking, and that it can actually help people quit.
So what do you want, Brian? Do you want vaping to be unregulated and legal as it is in some countries, or do you accept that there needs to be some regulation?
There definitely needs to be some regulation. A term I use is what I call risk proportionate regulation. So if we modelled ourselves over what's happening over in the UK or in New Zealand, I think that would be a decent regulatory model. So vape shops in New Zealand, for instance, they can't sell their products to under 18s for obvious reasons. They have basic packaging and labelling laws and standardised, ways of producing their materials. So no, we don't want an unregulated model. We definitely don't want that. We want to just have a risk proportionate regulatory model that allows smokers to access their vapes.
I guess at the moment, in some sense, it is unregulated. If people are buying their nicotine product overseas, then that's unregulated because you don't know who's manufacturing it. You don't know what's in the stuff coming from overseas necessarily.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, for most vapers now, thanks to New Zealand legalising their products, they actually buy their products from New Zealand. As a result, it means that most of their products meet similar standards to what we have here in Australia. But there is still the case where people buy 100 milligram bottles of nicotine to then mix themselves at home. They don't necessarily know how to mix those products, and they put too much nicotine in their vape liquids and things like that. So we're protecting a regulatory model that actually creates the pitfalls that anti-vapers are concerned about.
All right, so is this a state or federal rule? I mean, it sounds to me like it needs to be a federal legislative framework that controls this rather than a state body. But for a health product or a health approach like this, I would expect states would actually have control. So can you just explain the legality or the issue of making it legal?
Yes, so the federal government can have jurisdiction to essentially say, look, we're going to legalise these products and they can be sold within Australia. However, if the federal government's not willing to move, state governments can also have input on how they actually enforce certain acts. So the reason why nicotine is illegal to possess is because it's classified as a Schedule 7 poison under the TGA's Therapeutic Goods Act. However, different states actually have jurisdiction on how they enforce that, and that's why you get a variation in fines and enforcement of possession. So it's a bit of a mixed bag. We want the federal government to do the right thing and allow smokers to have a safer alternative. However, if state governments aren't willing to move, then at the very least we want at the very least, if federal governments won't get out of the way, we want state governments to do the right thing.
Brian, just finally, some people are saying that vaping can be a way for young people to take up nicotine and get addiction. What do we know about the numbers on that this is for a way for young people or anyone, not necessarily young people who otherwise wouldn't take up smoking to actually take up vaping? Do we know if that happens much?
Yeah, so that's what's called the gateway theory, essentially that vaping will attract young children to take it up. We know from a fair few studies now that that's just not backed up by the evidence. Yes, there's some experimentation in the same way that some kids might experiment with cigarettes and things like that, but the actual data seems to show that that's not happening. Off the top of my head, over in the UK, they looked at this, and I think it was about 0.25%. So we're looking at almost statistical anomalies here.
Okay. Brian, and there's one that's come in on the SMS. Is there a vaping party? Given we're in election mode, is there actually a vaping party anywhere in Australia?
There's not a vaping political party. There are some political parties that support the legalisation of vaping. Some of the minor parties, including the Reason Party in Victoria and the Liberal Democrats. The Liberal Party actually in Western Australia support the legalisation of vaping, and the National Party support legalisation of vaping.
Okay. Nice to talk. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much.
Brian Marlow, Legalise Vaping Victoria is the group. He's the campaign manager. They're in Daylesford today. There's a shop there. So they're touring around the state and campaigning for this. No vaping party, though, as such. What do you think after what Brian's saying about it's not legal, but it's not enforced? As such. 1300 303 468 and 0467 842 722. Experts such as Cancer Council, I think, and Quit Victoria, those sorts of groups, they say basically there's not enough scientific evidence that it is safe at this point, despite some of the information coming out of the health bodies in the UK that where vaping has been widely adopted. If you travel to the UK, people are doing it all over the place. It seems to be, I'm not sure what the rules are, but it seems to be basically unrestricted. So I'd be interested to know what you think of that. 29 minutes past 9 o'clock.